For almost 40 years, Dawn Weber is a name that has been synonymous with Kentucky track. A champion track and cross-country athlete at UK from 1968 to 72, Weber was an SEC cross-country titled team member in 1970, which led to all SEC honors, and was the SEC 1,000-yard champion in 1972, establishing a then SEC record. Don returned to his alma mater in 1978 as an assistant coach before taking over the reins as head coach in 1984. He was named National Coach of the Year in 1988 when women's cross country won the national championship. Athletes he coached earned 10 individual NCAA championships, 225 All-America honors, and 92 SEC individual titles. Weber is a two-time SEC Men's Cross Country Coach of the Year and three-time SEC Women's Coach of the Year.
Thanks, appreciate it very much. Everybody settle in. Adia mentioned we had 7 minutes. That's 7 minutes for each 4 years you were at UK. I'm at 38 and counting, so I loved being a UK track athlete. I loved being a UK track coach even more because it lasted so much longer and all the great people I had to work with. Two of the very best are sitting at my table, Donna Cox and T. Harrington, who've been working with me in track and track meets, T since 1985 or 84, and Donna since 93, I think. I was an athlete and a coach based on the extraordinary good fortune of 2 men intervening in my life. The first was Press Whalen, my UK coach, and the man who gave me the opportunity to come to UK as an athlete. The second was Alec Campbell, a Lexington businessman and philanthropist who made it financially possible for me to be the UK coach for a significant part of my career. It was also my good fortune in 1978, UK wasn't too choosy about who their track coach was. I'd been a high school coach for 1 year, a college graduate assistant, and I coached in Ecuador for a year, and I thought I had a very good chance of becoming the next UK track coach in 1978 when they were hiring for that job. Ultimately, Coach Whalen's former assistant, Pat Etcheberry, was named head track coach. At the time, Pat was also serving as head strength coach for football and basketball. Pat and I knew each other since he was Coach Whalen's assistant, and he hired me as his one assistant. Pat's options for assistant were somewhat limited, with a $2,200 a year salary for that position. I became head coach in 1984 when Pat resigned to go into the fitness business with the same Mr. Campbell. Again, apathy was my ace in the hole. We were traveling to the SEC indoor meet in February, and I got a call at the hotel from the athletic director, and he said, Pat has resigned today, and I'm going to name you interim coach, interim head coach, and then at the end of the year, we'll talk about the future. No promises, but we'll talk. Well, as the NCAA Outdoor Championships ended, I called the secretary and said, the athletic director wanted to meet with me to talk about the track position. She said, okay, we'll get something set up and we'll get right back to you. So 2 or 3 weeks passed and I hadn't heard anything. So I was a little concerned, so I called back and said, athletic director want to talk to me about the track position. She said, oh my gosh, I can't believe we've forgotten that. I'll get it set up right away and get right back to you. So again, 2 or 3 weeks passed, and we were into mid-August. And I went home one afternoon, and there was a letter from the UK Human Resources Office saying congratulations on being named head track and field coach at the University of Kentucky. Most students' lives, and I think especially athletes' lives, are significantly impacted by their college experience. In my case, the UK opportunities, Coach Whalen, Coach Etcheberry, and Mr. Campbell provided me a dream come true life for me. My path to the Hall of Fame is significantly different than the rest of my accomplished classmates. As an athlete, I ran 4 or 5 races I was proud of, and the most satisfying race was the 5th runner on the 1970 cross-country team. I'm very proud of that race. That was a race significantly better than I'd ever run before in cross-country. But I can assure you, you don't get into the Hall of Fame as the 5th runner on the cross-country team. My classmates earned their inductions with their performances at the highest level of competition. My induction is based on the extraordinary performances of hundreds of athletes I had the opportunity to know and work with as coach, and the work of other outstanding track and field coaches that worked with me over my career. If you charted our team's success, it would mirror the times that Charlie Schultz, Gene Weiss, Darrell Anderson, John Kennison, Doug Reynolds, John Gondak, and Aaron Tucker were working with me. As satisfying as winning a championship, SEC championship, NCAA championship, team or individual, as satisfying as that was, the best part of coaching were the opportunities on a regular basis to be inspired. Although not a coach yet, the first athlete to inspire me was Vic Nelson. Vic was Superman. Vic spent the day and the evening as a mild-mannered Clark Kent engineering student. But in the early morning and the afternoon, he trained like Superman. Nobody could train with Nelson. And when he was talking about those 100 miles a week, one of the things that I'm most proud of, and I've got it with me right here, is a page out of my training log. 3 weeks I tried to train with Nelson. The first week was 112 miles, 125 miles the next week, 132 miles the third week. And that's a lot of running. Vic ran a lot of great races at UK. But the race I remember most was another SEC cross-country championship. We were at the hotel getting ready to go to the course, and back in the day we had these all blue sweatsuits. And Vic comes out to the car, and he's got on his blue sweatsuit, and he's got an orange armband on his arm. I noticed it, didn't say anything, and I don't recall anybody saying anything. So we go to the course, and we're warming up, and still, you know, I'm thinking that Vic, this is Vic's getting right mentally to beat Tennessee. But nobody says anything. They finally get us all lined up at the starting line, all 80 or 100 runners. And they're giving us our starting instructions. And that's done, and everybody's getting ready to take off their sweats to race. And Vic, mild-mannered Clark Kent, jogs out in front of the whole line of people, takes that orange armband off, throws it on the ground, and stomps on it. Watching Vic stomp on that armband, another teammate, Jerry Savardi, and I look at one another, don't say a word, but I know we're both thinking, Nelson is going Superman on all these guys today. As a GA coach, I was inspired just reading a quote in the NCAA news by a famous football coach. What matters in sport is not victory, but the magnificence of the struggle. That hit me like a lightning bolt. My first reaction was I was mad. I was real mad. I thought, why hadn't somebody told me this? I mean, I can struggle. Shoot, you train with Nelson every day. It's a struggle. If you value struggle, I can do that. The second thought was, after I calmed down a little bit, was this makes sport make sense for everybody. Everybody, if this is what we value, if this is what's really important, everybody can do that. And most important in that philosophy is it changes the focus in competition for what you hope to get to what you're going to give. And that changes things dramatically too. And as logical and as attainable as giving your best is, that is a really hard sell to athletes. And I'll show you why. I don't know how many people can see this, but this is an article in the newspaper when one of our runners won the SEC championships in cross country. Big picture on the front page, article on the front page. It continues back to the 7th page. And the winner, Thomas Morgan, is going on and on about his race and how he prepared and how it went and, you know, just everything. And he was a fabulous runner. This is the hard part for athletes and the magnificence of the struggle. The very last paragraph on page 7, it says, UK finished 4th in the women's race. The Cats were led by Brooke Patterson, who was runner-up, and Caitlin Phillips, who was 4th. And it's like, first place gets you this, and second place gets you, last paragraph, 7th page. So, as a coach, we all talk those kinds of things, but that is a hard sell when nearly everybody else is telling them something different, and especially in the media where it's easiest to be most recognized. The first week I was UK coach, Mike Sander walked into my office and asked me if he could try out for the team. He told me he was a junior. And I asked him, why'd you wait till your junior year? And he told me the previous coach wouldn't allow him to try out. But he was a tall, lean guy. And I thought, yeah, certainly try out. Anyway, he trained with us in the fall for a while and nothing special. But we were down at the track on a Saturday. And the group he was in was doing a 10 times 400 meter workout. We had several groups going. And Sander dropped out of the workout with like 7 or 8 400s done. I didn't pay any attention, didn't do anything. There were other things going on. So that was it. The next day, I was on my way into the office, and I just happened to drive by the track. And I see this single person out on the track. And I get a little closer as I drive through there, and I notice it's Sander. And I watch him for a while, and he's running 400s. And he finally gets done, and I go over to him and said, Mike, what are you doing? And he said, I'm proving to myself that I didn't have to drop out yesterday. And I said, what did you do? And he said, I ran 50 400s, 12 and a half miles of 400 repeats on the track. That's a whole lot of proving to yourself. But anyway, later I found out in high school, Mike was a 5:12 miler. And that explains why the other coach said thanks, but no thanks. But Mike's second year at UK, he ran 4:02 in the mile. He was one of the best milers in the SEC. I was inspired. Ernest Sims was a football player who came out for track in January of his junior year. He hadn't run track since he was a sophomore in high school. In January, we were 2 weeks away from our first track meet. And Passion Richardson, who is a counselor, academic counselor, was working with the track team now. At the time, she was a track and field coach. She's also a multi-time NCAA All-American and a USA Olympian. But anyway, she was coaching Ernest, and she came to me and said, Ernest wants to be in the fast heat of the 60-meter dash at a first track meet. And I said, Passion, go back and tell him there are no fast heats. We have run preliminary rounds. The best people with the best times are spread out among all the heats, and then they qualify and run to the finals. So she went back and told him that. Passion came back the next day and said, Ernest wants to be in the heat with the fastest guy, and he wants to be in the lane next to the fastest guy. And I thought, this is weird. He hadn't run track in 4 years, and he's going to practice for less than 2 weeks, and he wants to run against the fastest guys. Most people don't want to expose themselves to that. And the fastest guy happened to be the defending national champion from the University of Tennessee. So I called Ernest in the office. I told Passion I got to talk to him. He came in the office, and I said, Ernest, what you've asked, I'm curious about. Most people don't want to do that. And this is what Ernest said. Ernest said, I love to compete. I don't worry about winning or losing. I just want to get better, and competing with good people will make me better. And I remember exactly what I said to Ernest. I said, Ernest, if you weren't a guy, I'd kiss you. My last year of coaching was Josh Nadzam's senior year. Josh was a walk-on as well. Josh's high school coach wrote a bunch of schools, asked him if there'd be any opportunities to run track. And UK was the only school that replied back and said, yeah, you can try out. If you work hard, you can be on the team. And Josh wrote to UK because he was also a football, basketball player, and we had a good basketball team, and he wanted to be associated with the University of Kentucky. Under any circumstances, Josh, from the time he stepped on campus, was a model student athlete. He was as motivated and committed as an athlete as I ever knew. And he worked hard, really hard, over 4 years to develop, and he eventually became one of the best milers in the SEC. Equally motivated in school. He was a social work major, but social work wasn't just a major. Social work was a calling for Josh. He was such a hard worker. He did so well in school, so capable in so many ways. I called him into the office one day. I said, Josh, I feel somewhat uncomfortable talking to you about this, but you've worked so hard, you're so capable. Are you sure you want to major in social work? I said, it's a very challenging profession, a lot of frustrations, and it doesn't pay very well. And Josh told me he was blessed to have escaped, I think these were the exact words, he was blessed to escape the avalanche of poverty, and he had an obligation to help others get out. And he was certain he wanted to do social work. During Josh's 4 years at UK, completely on his own, he volunteered at Lexington social welfare agencies an incalculable number of hours. Outwardly, Josh had no chinks in his armor. He was a model student athlete. But Josh came to UK from a very challenging life situation growing up. They were very poor. He had an abusive alcoholic father and an often hospitalized mother who suffered from schizophrenia. And that's just scratching the surface of his challenges. And going to college wasn't about just getting an education. Going to college was about escaping home. All the schools he wrote were a long way from Pennsylvania where he lived. I'm not talking out of school about Josh. Josh's story has become well known. And if you want to read about a great young man, Google Josh Nadzam, N-A-D-Z-A-M. While he was at UK, Josh was awarded the UK Sullivan Award, and it's based on heart, mind, and conduct as evidence of the spirit of love for and helpfulness to other men and women. He also won the national award given by the National Association of Academic Directors, the Wilma Rudolph Award, given to athletes for overcoming severe adversity yet excelling at the very highest level. Currently, Josh is an instructor in the UK College of Social Work. He continues to do unbelievable community service work, both as a social worker and a volunteer. And he is the creator of the mobile art studio here in Lexington. He raised money, bought a van, refurbished it, turned it into an art studio, and he's got a lot of Lexington artists, and they travel around to the impoverished schools or whatever and provide art lessons for kids. They say the Derby is the most exciting 2 minutes in sports. My most exciting 2 minutes was watching Josh run the last half mile in the mile final at the SEC Championship. I might lose some non-track people here, and it might seem like I'm getting off subject, but I'm not. Steve Prefontaine made his bones as the greatest American distance runner based on his relentless effort to win the 1972 5,000-meter championships in the Olympic Games. Prefontaine was just out of college, and he was running against much older, much experienced runners who had significantly better personal best in the 5,000. In the later stages of the race, two guys in Prefontaine had broken away from the rest of the pack. And at that point in the race, Prefontaine just had to hang on, and he would win a coveted Olympic medal. But he wouldn't settle just for a medal. He initiated moves to break away from the other two guys. They would come back with their moves of their own, and there was just one battle after another in the final few laps of the race. And it was an epic battle, one that's talked about in track and field to this day. But he wouldn't settle for just a medal. He wanted to win the gold medal. Well, watching Josh run the last half mile of the SEC mile, and again, he was running against, on paper, much better guys, but he would cover every move these guys made, trying to win the race. And every time he made a move, in my head I was thinking, he's trying to win this race. He'd make another move. He's trying to win this race. And coming from where he came from to run against the caliber of competition, I was inspired. And then the last lap, when he's making the all-out final battle, I just scream it out. He's trying to win this race. Josh, like Prefontaine, finished fourth, but it was a magnificent struggle. But the real inspiring story of Josh Nadzam is not about his athletics. It's about how much good, how much of a positive impact one person, extremely motivated, can make regardless of age and circumstance. These athletes are just a small sampling of the hundreds that have inspired me. I hope all those athletes understand that I'm here because of them. The most succinct, accurate explanation of running performances is you run the way you do because of the way you are. I certainly didn't make any of them the way they are. But I certainly did everything I could to help them appreciate the way they were. Most inspiring to me, while witnessing what all these hundreds of athletes did and their commitment to athletic achievement, was watching them at the same time work equally hard in their studies. I marveled at their commitment and their discipline. We were at an airport one time, waiting on a plane, and I was sitting next to one of our engineering students. And he had a textbook on the table between us. And there was a picture of an airplane being assembled in a factory. And I thought, wow, this looks pretty interesting. So I pick up the book and I start paging through the first couple of pages. And there's nothing but formulas and calculations and stuff I had no idea what it was about. And then I continued flipping through the pages looking for a story about how to build an airplane from an engineer's point of view. Never. Just more pages of calculations and formulas. And I put the book down and I'm thinking to myself, golly, after all they do athletically, they got to go back to the dorm and face what's in this book. And then also knowing that I was going to go home that evening and the calculations I were going to do was, okay, are we going to do 6, 8, or 10 400s in 62 or 63 seconds? And are we going to do a 200 jog or a 400 jog? And then you see it firsthand and you have great appreciation for what student athletes do. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of a runner's high, but runner's high is supposed to be a feeling of elation, euphoria, based on endorphins being released into your bloodstream while you exercise. As an athlete, I can never recall any runner's high from training. I vividly recall many, many beatdowns by Vic Nelson in training. But I was on a coach's high for 34 years. In early retirement, I missed that inspired high. But the two young athletes sitting at my table, Beck Jarrett and Weston Stevenson, my grandsons, take me to a high that I've never been before. And if you want to see proof of that, I've got a YouTube channel with about 300 full games plus highlights. I'm grateful my coaching career and continued work with UK Track and Field has spanned the old days of administrative apathy to the current glory days of UK sports. And the current glory days didn't slowly evolve over my 52 years associated with UK Track. Today's glory days were born in 2002 when President Lee Todd hired Mitch Barnhart as athletic director. There was dramatic change in the athletic department in the fall of 2002. And the big change was caring and the accompanying commitment to build first-class, fully funded, nationally competitive programs in all sports. In 2002, I remember Dr. Todd saying he wanted to give all UK athletes an experience similar to basketball. And I read Mitch said that he thought UK athletics was a sleeping giant. Well, mission accomplished. UK is a giant in college sports. As my favorite Beatles sang, Ringo Starr sang, it don't come easy. And it never becomes easy. So it must be tremendously satisfying for Mitch and his staff to have built from scratch one of the very best athletic programs in the country, in all sports. Just in track, 2 former UK runners who are now professional hold 2 world records. One in the 100-meter hurdles for women and the other in the 400-meter hurdles. Now, the 400-meter hurdles was a junior world record, but next Olympics roll around, you want to make a wager, our girl might set the world record, very likely will set the world record in the 400-meter hurdles. We've had multiple individual NCAA national champions over the past couple of years. Teams that yearly contend for NCAA national championship titles. Just this past spring, 23 UK athletes, just in the past outdoor season, were NCAA All-Americans. 4 gold medalists in the USA track and field championships, not the NCAA, the US championships. 7 medalists in the International Pan Am Games. And in a month, 5 UK athletes will represent the USA in the World Championships. That's a level of success and accomplishment never, ever seen. UK has had so much national success that it's easy to begin to take that for granted. It's impossible to fully appreciate how special just qualifying to participate in the NCAA championships is unless you know what those qualifying performance numbers really mean. The NCAA meet is not just a collegiate championship. With so many international athletes competing, it's really a world championship. I think pretty much worldwide, everybody recognizes the standard of excellence running a 4-minute mile is. This past season, 33 NCAA athletes broke the 4-minute barrier. Since they only take 16 to the national championships, 17 didn't even get to the meet. That's brutal. And it's brutal in all the events. But that's the world college athletes live in, especially those competing at the highest level. I think in Division I, there's 10,000 student athletes participate in college track and field. So if you want to draw a big pyramid to encompass all that, it'd be huge. But the kids I'm talking about, they're operating at the very peak of that triangle, top 16. And if you can stop to think about, regardless of what you do, how difficult being the top 16 in the country would be. Finally, I think I speak for all coaches and administrators who know athletics is not a 9-to-5 job. It's a 24/7, 365 privilege to work in athletics, especially as a coach. But you can't enjoy this privilege without a spouse or a significant others that allows you that privilege. Coaching cross-country, indoor and outdoor, I traveled almost every weekend all year long. And then the weekends we weren't traveling. We would very often have recruits on campus. And recruiting almost always involved the entire weekend. And it would kind of end going out to dinner on a Saturday night at a nice restaurant and then going to a ball game. The kinds of stuff other fortunate people in Lexington do for their weekend's entertainment. I'd come home late on a Saturday night feeling guilty about being gone all weekend. Our house, more accurately, Mr. Campbell's house, would be a wreck. 3 young kids, likely needing baths, maybe even dinner, and a wife that was exhausted. But there was never a harsh word, a dirty look, a complaint, even an SOS for assistance. So of all the people who provided me the privilege of being UK track coach, my greatest appreciation is for my wife, Camille. It's all been a dream come true life for me, and I thank everybody very much.